Hey, good Sunday morning and welcome to Bridges. I'm so happy as always to have you with us today. We are going to talk about something that probably doesn't get the attention anymore that it should get, and that really is a shame. And that's the celebration of the Martin Luther King birthday, which is in its 19th year. Still at the same place. Lots of great things going on, though. And you know what? It's a holiday that all of us need to embrace because, if nothing else, the presence of Dr. King on this earth made us all better, whether we wanted to be better or not. I have someone here who knows all about that holiday and the importance of it and why you should attend. And I am going to introduce you right now to MLK Bell. MLK is the program manager at the University of Toledo Office of Diversity and Inclusion, and welcome back, my friend. How good it is to see you again.
Good morning. I'm happy to be here.
You guys are doing, first of all, this is your 19th year. That's pretty amazing. And in partnership with the city
Correct.
of Toledo.
This is a joint partnership between the City of Toledo, Mayor Kapsakavich, and the University of Toledo President Dr. Gaber.
That's so wonderful that you guys have partnered with them yet again to make this event happen. So why don't you tell people just a bit about why it's important to continue to have this celebration?
Well, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., we all know how he benefited America, and I would venture to say probably the world in many ways.
Absolutely.
And it's important that we take the time to celebrate his life and his legacy. This year we're hoping that we can get back to the service aspect of celebrating Dr. King and the time that he was here with us on earth. And so we've added, which I'll get back to later I'm sure, a piece at the end of the program on Monday, January 20th, where we will have an opportunity for community members to give back.
Yeah, and so let's tell them, I want to make sure that we mention this 2 or 3 times during the course of our time this morning. January 20th.
Correct.
2020.
Monday, January 20th, 2020. The program will begin at 9 a.m. and it is still at John L. Savage Arena. We will be having breakfast, which is a free, open to the community. We're hoping that the weather will cooperate this year.
Yeah, you guys had a storm last year.
Last year, yes,
terrible storm.
It was terrible. And that's why I'm here with you this morning, to make sure that we can get the word out so that people are aware and are planning ahead of time to help and come and participate. So 9 a.m. will be the free community breakfast. At 10 a.m. we will have a program. And at 11, we'll begin the service piece of our morning.
So what's the program like this year?
So last year, we did a little bit of tweaking to the program. You'll remember in previous years, there were lots of processions, lots of speaking of political figures. And this year, well, I'm sorry, we started it last year. Last year, we decreased the amount of talking that people were hearing, and we increased the amount of entertainment. What we're trying to do is create an experience for people. We want people to remember Dr. King and to feel something when they come after this program. So there will be talent. And this year we're going to really highlight the MLK scholarship winners. Hopefully they will be a big part of the program this January.
And you've added, we talked a little bit about the service aspect. Do you want to talk about that again?
Yes. So we are working with United Way. They're helping us to get organizations in the community that are in need of winter packets or winter kits per se. So the service aspect will be, we'll have everything lined up, and any community members who want to stick around after the program, and we're encouraging people to, and what we'll be doing is packing up those kits so that then the community organizations can come and pick them up. And these will be winter kits with coats, hats, gloves, socks.
And then the kits are distributed to folks in the community who need them.
Correct. They'll be going to specific organizations, and then those organizations will be passing them out.
So MLK, let me ask you this. Over the years, what I've seen happening, not just in our community, but around the country, is that we tend to focus on Dr. King mostly on his birthday.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say to folks who are coming to this event in terms of you're creating an experience? What do you want them to take away?
We want them to have a connection to the message of Dr. Martin Luther King and his ideals. We're hoping that it will progress throughout the year and that it's not just on that day when they think about his legacy, but that it gives them enough of a feeling that they can continue and embrace the community of Toledo and give in any way that they can to help support our community.
And the biggest contribution that Dr. King made to this world would be what, from your point of view?
Well, the civil rights movement,
Absolutely.
obviously. I also teach Africana Studies, and my students give me this strange look when I say, oh, we're getting to the good part, we're getting to the 60s now, because it is my favorite part of the lesson of the history of African Americans in the United States of America, and it cannot be forgotten.
That's right. And why do you think we are so distant? And I was lucky enough to be around in the 60s. I was just a kid, but I was there. And I remember, I know the impact that whole era had on me, and it helped shape the person that I am today in some really significant ways. I'm afraid our kids are losing that, and I'm afraid, you know, they focus on events like the MLK event as though it's a singular thing in the course of civil rights.
Exactly. So that's why we're trying to re-engage the youth in the program. And that's one of the things that I try and do, is to help younger students to make the connection between, it wasn't that long ago.
Absolutely.
And you know, you're saying you were a child. I wasn't born yet. However, my parents were connected in ways and were active in ways. And so I want to make sure that the young people remember and not just see it as a lesson in a history book, or, you know, a snippet is really what they usually get, but understand that it has deep roots to where we are today in society, what went on in the 60s.
Are kids surprised in your Africana Studies class? Are they surprised at the course that African Americans have had to take to get to this point? I think we don't do the best job of sharing that.
Yes, I would say both African American students as well as white students are surprised. We assume that white Americans are not aware of the depth of this information, but even African American students who may even take the class, oh, Africana Studies, I'm black, this should be an easy A, are surprised at how much of an impact African Americans have had on this society as a whole. Yeah. And it's important that we remember that and make the connection.
Make the connection. So I have always been concerned about the lack of focus on the entire history of this country as we're educating kids from kindergarten, quite frankly. The history that we teach is distilled to such a degree that it actually eliminates the important contributions of many, many folks, not just folks of color, but not just African Americans, but Native Americans and poor people, and it goes on and on. What do you see the impact of that lack of education having?
Well, actually, I think it's getting better.
Is it?
Than it used to be. And I say that because I do have two younger daughters, and they talk to me about the things that they're learning in school and how things are being connected. I do know that when they discuss slavery, for instance, and Middle Passage and the slave trade, they are doing active assignments that help them to envision. When you connect to something, if you think about, you know, if you were there, what do you see? What do you smell? What do you hear?
Oh, wow.
When you make those kinds of connections, it's easier to understand that, you know, this still impacts us today. But I think that what teachers are not able necessarily, given the time that they have to get all of the information out to students, the lack of information is detrimental to students. It fights the ability for students to understand the need for a diverse and inclusive environment. And so when they're not made aware of the other, there's no need to connect to the other.
Right. That's such a good point. And the other thing I think it does too is it makes it more difficult for people to understand their value, for people to understand their worth. And we talk an awful lot about the importance of recognizing that we are all wonderful people full of glory and potential. But then when people are eliminated, intentionally or otherwise, unintentionally, it makes it harder for people to understand that they are capable of amazing things.
Absolutely. We are all unique and everyone else is unique, and it should be our job to find common ground with everyone that we encounter. And that's part of the work that we're doing out of the Office of Diversity and Inclusion, is making sure that faculty, staff, and students are all aware of their own identity first. And through knowing themselves and doing that inner reflection, it makes them better able to understand the uniqueness and appreciate
I'm going to call you for coffee. We need to finish this conversation. I like this conversation. Let's tell people one more time when the event is.
Yes, so Monday morning, January 20th, 2020, 9 a.m. at Savage Arena at the University of Toledo. This is a joint venture between the City of Toledo and the University of Toledo.
Thank you, Malika. And we're going to give you information on how to reach Malika's office for further information before we go today. Thank you so much, my friend. Listen, stay with us. We will be right back with Dr. Willie McAther. This is Bridges. Hey, welcome back to Bridges. We have Vice Provost and Vice President of Diversity and Inclusion for the University of Toledo, Dr. Willie McAther, with us. You know, one of the things that you hear an awful lot about, and it would not be true, I would also remind you, is that the University of Toledo is not doing much to sustain the enrollment of their kids, especially the kids of color, and that there is real difficulty in having those kids graduate. Mr. McAther is here. Dr. McAther is here today to tell us about some of the initiatives that are going on that are designed to do just that, keep those kids in school, help them graduate, and frankly, you're being pretty successful.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, first of all.
You are so welcome. It's good to see you.
Well, thank you. Appreciate it. So we're very pleased with the work that we're doing at the university with respect to the retention and graduation of students of color. I can tell you over the last 2 years, for example, while the university's overall first or second year retention rate went up by 2%, for African Americans, it increased by almost 11%. And so we're doing a really good job there.
For overall, 11% overall.
Overall for African American students. And for Hispanic students, it increased from 35% to 39%.
Wow.
What that means, in essence, is that we've managed to close the achievement gap between underrepresented students and majority students by 12%.
Wow.
So we're very proud of that number. And the other barometer of student success is the 6-year graduation rate. So at the university, we've increased overall by 9 percentage points, and for African Americans, it increased by 14%.
You are kidding me.
And so,
what's the magic bullet here? Because that historically has not been the story that's been told.
Absolutely.
So what have you guys figured out?
Sure. Well, you know, we're still figuring it out still, but I would say we always say that we are paying more attention to it right now. That's the overall thing I would suggest. But I would add also that we are changing the culture of how we do business at the university. And what I mean by that, two things have happened that I think is really important to point out. One is that we work more collaboratively at the university. And that way we're getting rid of any silos. And what it means is that some of the larger administrative offices, such as academic affairs and student affairs, are now working a lot closer together towards student success. And this is an issue that's happening across the entire country, really. We're recognizing that students come to universities with challenges.
Right.
They bring the culture to the university, and they bring their authentic selves to the campus. But also, additional things happen once they get there.
Sure.
And so we know that across the United States, and also at UToledo, that students are facing greater mental health challenges. And so we work very closely with our Vice President for Student Affairs, Dr. Flap Cockrell, and his entire division. And he just reported this week, for example, that he's almost doubled the number of counselors who are working at the university to support students' mental health issues.
Because the volume of mental health issues that he is presented with requires that.
Absolutely, absolutely. Again, point out, I mean, that's true across the country. As we go to different conferences, these are major conversations that everybody's having, that students are now coming with, their mental health challenges. And so everybody's having to add the number of counselors. So that's one issue. And so again, so we're recognizing that as faculty members, we think we do a great job in the classroom, but we're now increasingly acknowledging that so much what affects inside the classroom occurs outside the classroom. And so mental health being an important one. Another issue students are confronted with outside the classroom are food insecurities. Right. And so making sure that students have enough to eat. Another one would be housing insecurities. So we recognize students can't do well in the classroom if they're hungry, if they're worried about where they're going to sleep that night. And increasingly students are also working off campus. So trying to find ways to ensure that students' life outside of campus, making sure those needs are being taken care of so they're better students inside. So I think that's one important way that we now work different in support of our students.
So how do you identify these issues, which are, pretty closely tied to the bigger conversation of social determinants of health? We can also call these social determinants of successful education.
Sure.
How do you identify those social determinants that cause the kind of interruption in the learning process?
Sure. So there are two ways. One, students will tell you. Students sometimes,
they'll just say it.
They'll say it, whether it's depression or whether it's anxiety, and they'll need to talk with somebody. So either it's sort of self-report or through the classroom. We have success coaches, advisors, and for example, if a student is missing from class for more than a couple of days, we have success coaches and advisors who go to the dorm room to figure out why you're not coming to class. And if it's discovered there's a problem, then they'll make sure that student make sure they get to a mental health provider.
Really?
Yeah.
So has it been difficult to change this culture at the university? Apparently you've gotten some outstanding, really notable good numbers, notably good numbers.
Sure. Not really. I think that,
really, because it's always difficult to get people to sort of step outside of where they're comfortable.
Sure. Well, I think I would say a lot about our president. When she came in several years ago, her conversation with senior leaders was that, look, we have to work together. We have to communicate a lot. And she would say many times, our jobs as administrators or as an academic institution is to recruit students, to retain them, and make sure they graduate. And so that's how we do business. And so it really has not been difficult because as senior leaders, we recognize that, we cannot afford to work in silos, that if we put the needs of our students at the forefront, it makes it so much easier to work together.
So what are you doing to say to kids in the community who think that college is not something that they can successfully engage in? What are you doing to say to them, look, we really get it at the University of Toledo. We understand that your journey has been a difficult one. Come on in, we're going to give you all the support you need.
Absolutely. So again, increasingly universities are being comprised of first-generation students. Let me go back. Another thing that we're doing on the academic side of the house is we're making greater use of data. And so by doing that, we're now looking at data by looking not only at successful students, but looking at students who might have challenges. We're looking at underrepresented minority students. We're looking at Pell eligible students. And then that forces us to think about how ways we can serve the needs of a wide range of students. And so we've developed programs, data-driven programs, because we're now doing deeper dives into the data to see, what are the needs of various students are. And so we say to students who may be first-gen students, who are local students, who are not sure if college is for them, if they can be successful, we have programs for you. No, so we have what's called we have one summer bridge program and multiple early arrival programs. And those programs are designed to help make a successful transition from high school to college. For example, the summer bridge program, students arrived at campus 6 weeks early. They voluntarily cut their summer about 6 weeks short. These are students who have been admitted to the university already. We invite them to apply. We normally take about 30 students per semester, per summer. This is our 5th cohort coming in now. These students come in, they take six courses, take 6 credits rather. They assign peer mentors, and they're there for the entire 6 weeks leading up to the fall semester.
Do they get that same support or some similar support during the college year?
They do. And so what we did with this particular program, we added a requirement of a living learning community, because we learned from our experience that once students do a summer program, they need additional support. And so a living learning community requires them to live in the residence halls together. They continue to take at least one class together and get additional supplemental support throughout the entire first year. I can tell you that again, over the last 5 years, the average first to second year retention rate is about 80% over those past cohorts, which exceeds the university's retention rate.
You are kidding.
Yeah, absolutely.
You are kidding. And your goals, are there operational goals that you all have for the number of students that are retained? Are you reaching those goals? Are you close to those goals?
We are. So our strategic plan says that by 2020, we'd like to have an overall 80% retention rate for all students, but it also means that we need to close the retention gap. And so when I said earlier that we've closed that gap by 12 percentage points over the past 2 years, means we're making good progress towards making sure that every student, we at least had an 80% retention rate for all students at the university.
That's really amazing.
Yeah.
It's really amazing. And kids how do kids find out about this program? Because quite frankly, I didn't know about all this stuff, which means that you guys probably aren't doing the best job telling your story.
Yeah, so thank you for saying that. I mean, so we recognize that we need to do a much better job of telling what we do, but also about the resources that are available.
Right.
So I mentioned, again, there's a summer bridge program. We also have 2 early arrival programs, which enable students to come to campus about 2 to 3 days before the fall semester starts. One is the multicultural orientation and resources for success offered through the Division of Student Affairs. Then we also have a summer scholars program. Those are both two to 3 day programs which allow students to come 2 or 3 days early, meet faculty, find their classes, and begin
Just
that
make this whole process so much more manageable.
So much easier, absolutely.
So give me quickly, we have about 30 seconds, is there a number that people can call to find out a bit more about this? Could you give it to me?
Absolutely. That number would be, call my office, 419-530-2260.
Okay, one more time.
Yep.
419.
419-530-2260.
Okay, you promised me when we talked about your coming on that you would come back and talk about this in greater detail. This is really important stuff. Still going to do that for me?
There's so much more to unpack. I would love to come back, absolutely.
I'm going to hold you to that.
Great.
We got to go away. I will be right back.